You're listening to Sound Opinions, and Jim, we're playing a little bit of the 1994 release by the hardcore post-punk band Trenchmouth, called Trenchmouth versus the Light of the Sun. The Chicago band was part of that art punk scene in Chicago in the early 90s, melding punk, post-punk, jazz, avant-garde. But what's perhaps most noteworthy is that the drummer you're hearing is none other than comedian Fred Armisen. He's best known today as the man doing President Obama and Prince impressions on Saturday Night Live, or spoofing hippie or hipster culture on Portlandia. But before he was making us laugh, he was trying to make it as a rock musician. Fred joins us now on the heels of Portlandia, wrapping up a successful second season on IFC. Now, his partner on the show, Carrie Brownstein, you know her as a member of Sleater-Kinney and also now Wild Flag. Both are bringing a rock sensibility to their writing and performing, whether it's through their satires of the Portland indie scene or their DIY attitude. Fred and Carrie recently went back on the road, this time trading their instruments for jokes as part of Portlandia, the tour. And when he returned to his former stomping grounds of Chicago, we talked to Fred about the connections between these two worlds and the many opportunities for humor at the music industry conference South by Southwest.
I wanted to start with you about that intersection of the comic underground and the musical underground, because you were a drummer, right? Yeah. Trenchmouth.
Yeah.
What was it like making the transition from one to the other, and how closely aligned were they? How easy was that, or how hard?
It all happened, it was sort of happened to me. Even though I had some ambition to want to be on TV, it just all unfolded. It all just happened. I had to go down to South by Southwest to play with Sally and also John Langford. He had his solo stuff. They needed a drummer. Absolutely, I'd love to go.
Sally Timms and John Langford are the Mekons.
Yeah, Sally, who I was married to. And then we got the book in the mail of what South by Southwest is, and it was all these like talks that they were having, like these sort of lectures, how to get your song played on the radio, how to make a video, how to, and I think I might have been frustrated with how Trenchmouth was going, but I thought there's no formula to how to make it, and I don't know how I got it in my head, but I thought, like, let's make a video. Let's go and bring a video camera, and I'll interrupt some of these panels, and I'll interview bands, and I would interview bands as different characters, like a German journalist, a mentally disabled person, a blind person, a deaf person. And I didn't know what I was going to do with this tape. I had no idea. It was just like, let's just do it. I think right from there, as soon as they edited it, I had something that I was giving to my friends, and then we showed it at Lounge Acts.
Mm-hmm.
And
a club in Chicago.
A club in Chicago. And Trenchmouth had been playing and making flyers and trying to get press. But as soon as this tape was shown at Lounge Acts, there was a thing in the Reader, and there was like people wrote about it, and people came to the show.
This is pre-YouTube.
Pre-YouTube.
Yeah.
This is Pony Express days. And that's kind of like where immediately the message was sent to me, like, you should be doing this.
Hello there, I'm Fred. I'm in Austin, Texas right now for something called the South by Southwest Music Convention. It's an annual convention in which national touring bands, booking agents, managers, and record label executives meet. This seminar was called The Art of the Interview. It's this talk about how to give an interview and get the most out of your artist. I'm actually not sure exactly what she was talking about, but she seemed very focused about it.
Does anybody have any questions like this?
Yeah, from the other side of that, if you're interviewing someone and you want to get someone to loosen up a little bit, do you think it's proper or right to threaten them physically, say with a switchblade or a pistol or something?
You said about the frustration part of it, being in a punk rock band, struggling to make an existence. And then the idea of, on top of it, the anger combined with the comedic sensibility, combined with the idea, let's videotape it.
Yeah.
And I remember more people were talking about you interrupting those boring panels than the actual panels during the conference. You were kind of like the talk. You sort of took over the South by Southwest Music Conference that one year.
I'll never
through
forget
this guerrilla action.
Asking the head of Capitol Records to kiss the chief music writer at Rolling Stone.
That's right. That's right.
I just feel like since this is called Face to Face with Gary Gersh, it might be really nice if you guys actually maybe kissed each other or made out with each other for us.
Why? I mean, what? Just because you got a camera running, man. Why would you say that? I'm not gonna kiss Dave, but I like you very much.
Okay, thanks anyway. I was just trying.
I think, ironically, that tape, being at South by Southwest, is what got me to be where I am today. So even though I made a joke about going to this festival to try to make it in the biz, I can't believe even using the word make it is weird.
You went to the festival and made it in the biz.
But the festival was my gateway to the rest of what I'm doing today.
Yeah.
And obviously the big break, the Saturday Night Live gig that occurred soon after that, a few years after that, remarkably fast chain of events.
Oh, it happened. It was such a blur. That's another really nice thing that like from there I got a gig doing some. I saying gig. I hate saying it, but that's all. That's what it is. Doing stuff for HBO, and from HBO I got to work with Bob Odenkirk on this pilot, and from that tape I got to audition for Saturday Night Live, and it was just this. Here I am.
Were you ever nervous or somehow cowed by the idea that now I'm auditioning for Lorne Michaels of Saturday Night Live, the most popular nationally televised comedy show?
What happens is it's so freaky that you become not nervous, because playing to empty rooms it was so recent to me that to be at 8H at NBC was just like, this is insane. It's so crazy. It's so fantastical that you're just enjoying that moment. And I actually felt like, I'm so lucky to be at NBC right now. They flew me out here for, I get to be in New York. I get to be in the studio, and I was starstruck by the studio. You think, look, whatever happens, happens. I can't believe I got this far.
My first guest is the lead singer for a group called U2. Please welcome Bono! So, Bono, you can sing into here and you could do this song, Vertigo.
I don't have a band.
That's okay, I'll play the drums.
Okay, let's do it.
Let's do it.
Uno, dos, tres, catorce.
Hold on. Let's think about this for one moment. The beginning of this song, you are speaking in Spanish, right?
Yeah, man.
You're counting, and you say, uno, dos, tres, which means?
1, 2, 3.
Right. And then you say catorce, which means?
14. I know it doesn't make sense, but music is about the expression and the rhythm of words. It's about attitude.
Señor Bono, the Spanish language is a very serious thing. To use it so carelessly is an insult to me and to the entire Latin community.
I'm deeply sorry. It was never my intention to offend anyone.
Bono, I'm just kidding!
I'm going to make the contention that a major thrust in the comedy you've done, Saturday Night Live, Portlandia, which we'll get to, music has always played a role in it. Obviously, you got noticed on SNL for doing your Tito Puente, your Prince, right? There's always been music running through, and that's rare. There's not too many other comics, no matter how talented, that draw on that world.
Well, it's just, that's what I know, and some people are really good at telling stories about their families and where they come from. Some people are good at jokes. I don't think I'm even particularly good at telling jokes. One way to look at it is it's a crutch, and the other way is just it's a tool. It's something that I can use to kind of convey something. And also, like, bands and genres, they are a character also. So in the way that someone can come up with a character, I think there's a lot in a type of music that says a lot. For example, like hardcore punk, like how it's aged and what it means, and at the time in 1981 or whatever, it was so angry. It was like the hardest thing you could ever hear, and now it's something different.
Now, you also released a single last year, Crisis of Conformity, based on a sketch you did on Saturday Night Live, band reunion at the wedding.
Yeah.
It's these aging hardcore musicians who reunite to perform at a wedding. How did that come about?
Well, the concept of that one is I play a guy who's older, sort of white-haired, whose daughter is getting married. We say, hey, we're going to get the guys together, the band back together. And it turns out to be one of those hardcore songs that was so angry.
All right, let's do this. Madeline, my little Maddie, I'm so proud of you. And I hope Dad doesn't make too much of a fool of himself up here. All right, it's with all my love. You guys ready? Here we go.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Ronald Reagan comes around, he brings the fascists to your town. You think it's good to be a shot, but we get beat up by the cops.
first of all, it's sort of like a love letter to my youth. It's a love letter to when I was a teenager. It's to all the bands that I loved, you know, to Husker Du and Black Flag and the Minutemen. But also, I saw that movie American Hardcore. Remember that? It's about the hardcore punk scene. And the math works out. The guys are actually old enough to have daughters who are getting married. Which freaks me out. I was like, oh, they're old.
But you took it a step further. You went to Drag City, this independent label in Chicago, and you actually put out a single by this band.
Yeah, it deserved it. You know what I mean? Like, a band like that should have a single out.
Kick it down, kick it around, kick it down, and kick it around. Pretty flowers in the face, kick it down and kick it around. Football trophy on the shelf, kick it down and kick it around. My family's brand new TV set, kick it down and kick it around. Suntan lotion on the lifeguard stand, kick it down and kick it around.
A lot of these things, like, I just want it to seem real. My hope is always that someone will be confused.
Your drum video is also along those lines.
That's the same
this mock instructional video you released a few years ago where you're this virtuosic drummer sharing your wisdom on the mastering of the instrument.
So what I'm doing, first of all, with my right hand, I'm doing a lot of what I call a paradiddle-addle-doodle, and that basically goes left, left, right, left, left, right, left, left, right, 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 left, left, right, left, left, right, left, 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 right, 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 left. Okay, so you might want to memorize that for your practicing at home.
Yeah, Jens Hanneman. Also through Drag City. And it's the same kind of thing. Like, my wish was that it would be in music stores, and so I wanted people to come back and go, these are lies. These are lies. This is not how you play the drums.
This guy doesn't know a triple flamacue.
No. It's fiction. It's all fiction.
And you're coming out of a scene notable for its lack of humor. I mean, punk rock and hardcore punk. I mean, very serious young men usually.
Yeah. And I was right there with them.
Yeah.
You know?
Were you, at a certain point, did you sort of recognize this is sort of absurd how insular and serious we all are about this particular endeavor?
You know, I think that it's not, I think that's what being a teenager is all about. Like, you sort of take on this anger. It's almost like fake anger. And that's the voice of what that is. That's just like late teens. That's all that is energy, you know, angry energy. But at the same time, there were punk bands who absolutely did have a very good sense of humor. I think the Minutemen did, the Meat Puppets did, the Damned. I really like that about punk.
We'll continue talking underground music and comedy with Fred Armisen after a quick break on Sound Opinions from WBEZ Chicago and PRX. Later on in the show, we've got album reviews of the latest from Bruce Springsteen and Mark Lanigan, as well as my Desert Island Jukebox pick.
Closing the schools, they're burning the books, the church is in ruins, the priests hang on hooks, the radio's on ice, the telly's been banned, the army's in power, the devil
Do you remember the 90s?
Yeah?
You know, people were talking about getting piercings and getting tribal tattoos.
Yeah?
And people were singing about saving the planet and forming bands.
Yeah?
There's a place where that idea still exists as a reality, and I've been there.
Where is it?
Portland.
Oregon?
Yeah.
Dream of the 90s is alive.
Welcome back to Sound Opinions. I'm Jim DeRogatis. My partner is Greg Kot, and that was a song called Dream of the 90s from the first season of Portlandia. It was performed by the series co-creator, our guest this week, Fred Armisen. As we were discussing, Fred went from being a struggling punk musician, the drummer for the 90s band Trenchmouth, among other projects, to becoming one of the most recognizable faces and voices on Saturday Night Live, where he's been a cast member for 8 years. In 2011, he launched Portlandia with his friend and fellow music veteran, Carrie Brownstein.
Jim, in the scene we just played, Fred's singing to Carrie about how the 90s are alive and well in Portland. Now, that's an attitude and aesthetic that I'd trace back to the music of that era, and one that permeates all of the sketches on the show. Got scenes about Harajuku fans, DJ nights, hipster hotels, not to mention appearances by Amy Mann, Sarah McLachlan, Joanna Newsom, Eddie Vedder. So whether overtly about music or not, Portlandia really seems to speak to music fans. Let's continue here with Fred Armisen.
My flannel shirt still looks funny.
It's interesting how Portlandia seems to be a commentary on a lot of that scene that you grew up with in the 90s. You know, and Portland is sort of this mythical, it's a real place, but at the same time it's kind of this mythical indie rock playground that seems to be very rooted in the cultural values of 90s independent music.
Yeah.
I mean, was that kind of the basic premise when you started creating the show?
Yeah, but I mean, it was, it's like a dreamy version of Portland, but we didn't think that far ahead. But the only experiences I could go from are my experiences here in Chicago when I lived in Wicker Park or wherever as I moved around. That's the scene that I knew. People who had recording studios like Steve Albini and Bettina from Thrill Jockey, like that world, that's all I knew.
And Carrie Brownstein is coming from a very similar kind of background, I would
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, was that something you guys bonded over? Or?
We bonded so much about it. I mean, I think Slater-Kinney had so much more success with it. I mean, she really toured. They toured Europe, who knows how many times, but it's almost like a shorthand. We didn't even need to discuss it. When you have something in common with someone, you barely talk about it because you're on the same page.
I don't know if you guys are aware, but there is music here in this library available to our kids that is something that leaves a lot to be desired. It is just outrageous.
Let's be honest. We're not talking about our taste in music. We're talking about what our kids love, what our kids are into. Let's talk about krautrock.
Kraftwerk, Neu. Why aren't we talking about Neu?
What is krautrock?
You don't know Neu? I am sorry.
You
don't know Neu.
I am getting very stressed out that the head of our school does not know about Neu. These are the people teaching our kids. Our kids are sponges, and when they leave here, what they listen to now will affect them the rest of their lives.
Slate magazine, I want to run this by you, Fred, was reviewing the show very favorably, and they call Portlandia a horror show about happiness.
Oh, wow.
Sort of saying, it's this group of people that grew up at a particular time, kind of into music, into culture, into the arts, a little bit of privilege in terms of just a little more elevated cultural antenna out there.
They can afford things.
Yes, and in some ways satirizing that, but also celebrating that, it seems like.
Mostly celebrating, because that's what we're the same way. When we do the characters, we're not very different than what we're really like. We don't speak that differently. We don't take on all kinds of affectations. So it's a celebration of it.
Do you have to have some love for whoever you're lampooning or satirizing in order to play them?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think when you do an impression of someone or you do a character, if you dislike them, you shouldn't do it.
Right.
You shouldn't do it, not as a moral stance, but because I think the audience can sense that there's something negative going on. You just would rather not do it.
So when Tina Fey would do Sarah Palin, there's part of her that kind of is drawn to this woman.
I bet I can't speak for her, but I think that's usually the case with people.
Yeah.
But Tina has such a great outlook on life and on people, and she understands the reality of what they are, and so much so that none of us attach ourselves to the politics of who people, what's their political stance. That it's just like, for lack of a better word, these are their jobs.
Okay, but Tito Puente, even Sarah Palin are one thing. You did Gaddafi.
I don't, I'll tell you something. This is tricky, but it's a cartoony version of Gaddafi, but I am not connected to what dictators have done in their lives, and that's probably a flaw, but when I see Saddam Hussein, I think, oh, he looks like a rock star to me. There's something very like vulnerable about dictators. They're so flawed. They need so much reassurance that they have medals and stuff. And there's something about dictators that I just feel like I can't even, and this is horrible, but I can't really hate them. You know, I can't, I hate that guy. I'm just like, I mean, it's, you know, it's heinous what they've done, definitely. But I'm not connected to it. I just see this Gaddafi with his crazy outfits, and I just see the clowny part of him. So when I'm doing Gaddafi, it's that aspect of him, the sort of exterior.
Thank you very much. What's up? We are 2 weeks into the no-fly zone, or as I call it, the bummer zone. But guess what? I'm still here. I'm like a landmark building. To quote my good friend and personal stylist, MC Hammer, nah, can't touch this.
Okay. So how will this end, Momar?
Look, Sid, I know this can't last forever. It's been a good run. And if there does come a time when I do have to step down, all I ask from America is that you give me my own CSI. Check it out. Looks like this camel just busted his hump. Not bad, right?
Muammar Gaddafi, everybody!
So there's a little bit of Prince in Gaddafi, and a little bit of Gaddafi in Prince.
I'm thinking about they're in front of these audiences. They're you know, you watch the way an audience reacts to a dictator.
Yeah.
Isn't all that dissimilar to the way an audience reacts to Van Halen? You know, I mean, it's like the same kind of power in some way.
And especially with style. They pay so much attention. None of these guys, they all have this weird, like, I'm going to be this guy. And you notice that they never really change. Like, Ahmadinejad is another one.
And they dye their hair.
Special kind of suit that they wear all the time, a smile that they do all the time.
The number of musicians who've done cameos on Portlandia. Eddie Vedder, Carrie falls in love with what's going to be her perfect guy. You as her friend who really has the hots for her but won't come out and say, you know, or is encouraging. The guy's perfect. He just has one problem. He has an Eddie Vedder tattoo who begins talking to her. And then Vedder does a cameo.
The tattoo version of you is a little off, like, but you're smart and you're funny, and I already feel really, really close to you. Wait, what is that?
Oh, yeah, it's a tattoo.
Tell me it's not a bad one.
No, that's bad.
Like your mom's name or like a...
Ani DeFranco, playing guitar with a nose ring.
I mean, what do you just call up Vedder and say, hey, what do you think? You want to come by?
Yeah, it's as simple as that.
I mean, you know, it's one thing for you to have gone from music to comedy. What about when the musicians come? Vedder's a serious guy. He doesn't do much comedy.
I think they trust that we're not going to do anything that's going to make them look foolish. And we tell them the premise. You know, they're open to say no. And there aren't that many lines really that they have to memorize anything crazy. It's like they get to play a character, but it's not any huge insane stretch. So we also make their workday easy. They come down to Portland. We shoot pretty quickly.
But from what I've read about Portlandia, a lot of it is being spontaneously written by the comic. You know, you and Carrie and everybody on the scene. Are they able to roll? Is a musician able to roll with it the same way?
Totally.
Interesting. Who's on your and Carrie's wish list? Who would you love to get to drop by?
Mick Jones from The Clash and Big Audio Dynamite. Paul Weller would be great. Hugh Cornwell from The Stranglers. I wish, and Captain Sensible from The Damned. In my dreams, it would be the four of them together.
Wow.
That's a super group.
Yeah, super group, and not playing the guys from that band. Maybe just like sort of tourist group from England or maybe bankers or something. The older I get, they mean more and more to me. And then Carrie, I don't know who Carrie would pick, but we have similar sort of like just people like that.
Yeah.
It's interesting that these rock stars, who we don't normally perceive as being particularly humorful, are playing along. And I think one of the things you've said in the past, Fred, has sort of been a linchpin for you in terms of what you're doing in terms of comedy is the awkward moment, you know, creating these awkward situations. That, you know, how did that sort of arrive, that sort of sensibility?
That's accidental. Like, I wish I could say, like, yeah, we had this grand design to make things awkward, but it's just part of it's a little laziness, kind of like, look, we got to shoot this thing this afternoon. I don't know how it ends. We're staring at each other, and then we have this other thing to shoot tonight, so the editors will figure something out for it.
Right.
And the writers we've had on the show, we have maybe 4 or 5. That's just what we come up with. Like it's more of a feeling of when we're done, we like it. Like, I like this. This is fine with me that this is how it ends. If it doesn't happen naturally, it'll be too sweaty if we work too hard at it. And same thing goes with the SNL stuff. Sometimes there's no joke to some of this stuff.
Right.
In a way, even the crisis of conformity. Even the heart doesn't have a real joke.
Yeah.
It's like, it's a way to look at something, but I just have never been able to do that.
On the other hand, here's this fawning New Yorker profile and a glowing piece in the New York Times, writing about you and Carrie as a new partnership that's almost like Dorothy Parker and Robert Benchley. I was like, are you recognizing, who the heck are they talking about?
We feel, I know it sounds really show busy, but we feel lucky every minute. I'll tell you why we feel that way is because we come from bands and, it's hard work and it's freezing cold and it's really, and hot in some places. And it's just like, it's really hard. So, and also I know the people I know also who are in television, it's hard for everybody to get any attention and have stuff written. So to have anything written is like a dream. It's all, we were just happy enough that we had a pilot made for IFC. We really were.
Well, and the whole idea of making something out of this, fashioning a living out of what you're doing. I mean, you obviously had these experiences many times when you were in the punk rock bands, and I'm sure Carrie did when she was starting out too. You're playing in front of half-empty rooms or less.
Oh, we've played to zero people.
Yeah,
we've played gigs where there was 10 people there, and then within a song there was 0. And then we've had shows where we started off with one person, and that one person just stayed all the way through. I mean, we've had great times, by the way. There were some great shows, but those ones do stick out in my mind. One time we played in Las Vegas, and we opened up for a band called Down by Law, and we pulled up in the van, and for some reason, the people who turned out for the show were all Nazi skinheads, and we have an African American singer. We did maybe 3 songs, and
wow, thank you, good night.
Thank you, good night. I didn't cry, but I had that thing where I wanted to cry. I was just like, this is not living.
Yeah. We've got to talk about Portland. The city seems to be very supportive of the arts community in general. The mayor there seems to have really set the tone in terms of, the interaction between the arts world and city government.
They've been nothing but supportive and nice, and our crew is 90% Portland people, 95% Portland people. And when we go, we shoot on location. So we're very much ingrained in the city. And also the whole show is very positive about Portland. So I think they understand that it's done with affection. And then that mayor is the coolest mayor ever.
Portland, you're so beautiful. My city, my Portland.
We've been talking to Fred Armisen of Saturday Night Live and Portlandia. Fred, thanks for coming on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, her mountains so wide, so tall. Ba, 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 la, 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 la.
Hey, Jim and Greg, this is Mike Reeve from Lafayette, Indiana, and I just wanted to thank you for your show with Fred Armisen. As a musician, I love Fred Armisen. A few years ago, my wife and I went to see him as drummer extraordinaire, Jens Hanneman.
That song is called Polynesian Nightmare, and a lot of people ask me about this one and this composition. I do a flam rest, like so. Rest. It was just absolutely hilarious. Bringing comedy and music together. I just really appreciate it. I met him after the show, and just a really great guy. Thanks for having him on Sound Opinions. That's kind of the end of it right there.